wins that game. Russell Wilson is 17-4 against the 49ers, 16 regular season games and 1 playoff game. Now, when I said that the other day, somebody pointed out that, Pete Carroll basically, has the same record. He lost a few games before Russ showed up to the Niners, but essentially Pete has the same record as Russ does with a few extra L's on it. And the Niners just manhandled his team the other day, so who cares? What does it matter? Historically, Russ he himself has been a problem. We've watched it, right? His ability to make plays while getting out of the pocket has been a problem for the Niners historically. Does he have enough left to will a team to a win over San Francisco?
One thing I think people are down on Russ, like most people that talk about him as a player do not factor in the weirdness. It's like when you watch him play, the thing that really made him special for a lot of those times when
runner pass, hey 9-6, let him know, runner pass.
I thought that wasn't as cheesy. I mean, you and I with our boy from Tito's, we're on text thread. I got that from other people. I watched Richard Sherman's podcast with KJ Wright. They made fun of it. They're like, guys, this is the NFL. Like, I get maybe in high school you do that, but it's like, why was he screaming so loud? And even KJ Wright is not really some Russell hater. They thought it was really cheesy and weird. And they actually thought, like, KJ's take was you could kind of see the desperation on him. Like, he's just desperate. Like, he's getting embarrassed, right? Like, he's losing and he knows the heat's coming on him. I do think, though, that, like, people questioning Russell's trajectory, like, is he going to keep getting better, or is he like trending toward being a bad player? He does not look the same mobility wise, and that was a huge reason he was dominated.
Yep.
And you've been saying over and over, and if you watch the game against the Texans, he still throws a beautiful deep ball, but he's throwing a deep ball to not DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, and it's just not being completed. But the ball comes out of his hand, the flight, it's just perfect. You're like, God, it's beautiful. But it ends on the ground with two guys falling. It's not working. And the other thing is they have a dominant running back in this kid from North Carolina, Javonte Williams, and even Melvin Gordon's your backup. Like, they have a good running attack. The whole reason Russell kept getting mad in Seattle was like they wanted to run the ball too much. Like, is he cool with like, hey, Russell, maybe we're trying to run it 30 times. Now, obviously against the Niners, who are going to have a fantastic run defense, it might not work. But just in general, that could help get his career going, because that's kind of what happened to Rodgers. First year, they butted heads. He wanted to throw it all the time. LaFleur convinced him, implement the Shanahan scheme. It'll open up everything. KJ Wright and Richard Sherman said that. They're like, if he just gives in a little bit to the running backs, let them kick ass, it'll open up the passing game. This is why I'm out on him. I feel like he's stubborn. Like, I got to be Peyton Manning. I got to be Tom Brady. And they get all the credit for throwing. Even though, ironically, if you ask Tom or Peyton, they're like, well, if they're just going to give me 6-yard runs every play, I will check into a run every single play. They're actually sneaky, not as obsessed with their historic stats as
nobody
I think people
cares
think.
Nobody cares about, like, well, how many pass attempts per game has Tom had? Nobody cares.
But he's had stretches where he throws like 2 touchdowns over a month and they win every game. And people are just like, Tom Brady's kicking everyone's ass. You're like, yeah, he is. Now, they also can have 5 touchdown games, but so can you, Russ. Who cares?
Part of being a great
you need to win.
Part of quarterback greatness is opportunities present themselves for everybody. The great quarterbacks hit those opportunities more than the average guys do.
Yeah.
Every game, there's chances. Every single game. Do you make the play, though? You only get so many shots to fucking hit Mario Manningham with 2 guys on him down the sideline like Eli has. So I'm with you. Like, I think I thought watching the week 1 game, he was throwing the same balls that he's thrown to DK. Like you said,
he did it against Texans too.
He did against the Texans. And he doesn't move like he used to at all. And we started talking about that
not even nearly as close.
He looked thicker. I remember watching him last year as the year went on, and we talked about it. We've been talking about this for a while, that he doesn't look the same. Like, he almost looks hurt, even though his mallet finger was the injury, but it wasn't. All of a sudden, it's like he was out of shape. And I don't mean just big. I mean, like, he couldn't get away from anybody. So, that's been the thing. We saw Justin Fields break out. If this Niners team is not going to score points, then they're really susceptible to 1 or 2 plays, broken plays with a quarterback that breaks out, and there's Dante Pettis. They're susceptible if they're only going to score 10 to 13 points. But if they score more consistently, then 1 big play doesn't kill them. And I just think it's going to be hard for him to get away from this Niners defensive front, which right now the Broncos have been a good defense statistically. The Niners have been a really good defense so far. 2 games, whatever. But it has.
I mean, the Broncos are good. Like they got good defensive players, assuming certain plays. Like Bradley Chubb.
Yeah,
Like they got physical. They're fast.
Flexible.
They hit. I mean, they are. You just watch them. Their problem, guy. They scored 16 points and 16 points. I mean, they've been terrible in the red. They have not scored.
Red zone. What were they in the? Do you know what they were in the red zone against Houston? They were awful against Seattle.
Yeah, I don't know, but they were not good because I watched some of Nate Hackett talking earlier this week. I mean, they've been putrid because he even said I'd boo me too, given what we've done in the red zone.
The classic one.
Now, part of that, like to me, the Seattle game last week, they threw some fades, like a guy didn't touch both feet in, a guy dropped it. Like in the Seattle game, the guy fumbled twice on the 1 or 2 yard line, right? That's a little fluky stuff when stuff like that happens. To me, like when you're not executing pass plays, guys are tripping, like that's a little more like that's kind of your offense. But the fumble when the guy's going to score is or just the fumble turnover in the baby zone that's just the worst possible play you can have. Like unless you get a fumble or a pick six in the red zone, Herbert style last week, which not really his fault, it was the Everett's, but like not, you got to hold on to the football because it's guaranteed 3 points.
Craig says no red zone touchdowns this year for the Broncos.
I mean, I think the 49ers defense looked pretty good. So,
well, if Russ's magic is run out, then Russ is like, it changes everything. It changes what they paid him. It changes the specific things like with a game, and it changes the big picture of what kind of quarterback they have.
Don't you like the 49ers chances now to corral him given he's not as fast and their team speed up front? Like, so when Warner, Alshire, and Greenlaw are coming forward, whether any of them blitz or any of them are spying, you like their speed matched up on Chubby Russ. I would say, obviously, Bosa's speed, non-wet ground is excellent. I would say adding Drake Jackson there is excellent. Kinlaw and Armstead, for their size, are pretty big-time athletes. I mean, the Niners' athleticism and speed up front is just high level. I mean, part of it was Russ was so elite at just maneuvering, even when you had good athletes, it took like Bowman to land them. Now it feels like you don't even – I like Greenlaw on him, spy and run around. Like, I'll take my chances, right?
Yeah.
That's where Russ, like you said, they had to do it. I don't blame him to extend him, but it would be a dramatic – like, he won't be remotely as good. He'll still be solid. Like, I still – like, I'm not saying he'll be like the 24th quarterback, but he's been consistently, I'd say, considered like a top 5 guy. I mean, are we looking at more the 13th best guy? Like, the drop-off could be pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, part of it depends on, does this year, if it continues to go bad, does it serve as a sort of eye-opening experience for Russell? Like, is there a coach out there that can get through the Russell in the same way that LaFleur and Rodgers found a way to work together? Does that guy exist?
Well, if Nate Hackett gets fired, let's just even say at the end of the year, they kind of right the ship and they're in the mix, but they miss the playoffs and he's one and done. Is it a desirable job?
No, I think it's not. Considering that, again, we could go back to the list I made last year. Nobody's career is helped. No offensive coaches' careers have been helped by coaching Russell Wilson.
And you would be minimum given the contract stuck with him for a couple more years, right?
Now, you could argue, you know what? Any NFL head coaching job is desirable. They're going to pay me 6 years and $30 million. So fuck it. And I won't
30.
get blamed.
Yeah,
well, whatever. I mean, yeah,
60.
And I won't get blamed. So whatever. Who cares? Right? Like if you were,
well, like Sean, do you see Sean Payton said, like, yeah, I'd be interested if the right opportunity came back.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Like, would Russell listen to Sean Payton? I mean, those are 2 pretty big egos. So it could not work. But, does this serve as an eye-opening experience for Russ?
Well, if you were Sean Payton and the season gets weird, would you be more interested in Russell Wilson at 33 years old, a little chubby, or Dak Prescott, who just might be average?
I don't know. I might go coach the Cowboys.
Yeah. Well, you got the huge thing with
because I think guys like
the unknown to the owner.
Yeah, new owner might just pay him through the nose. That's right. They might.
But I mean, unknown. Like, what if the guy's weird? He'll fire you too. Like if you suck.
Yeah, I just think guys like Sean. I don't know. Like Kyle. Some of these offensive guys, I think, would rather coach a quarterback that will just do everything they want because I'm good enough. You just do what I tell you to do. I can make you great. Being the coach of the Cowboys and getting Dak Prescott to a Super Bowl would be pretty legendary.
To me, one thing to keep an eye on for the Sean Payton is, and this happened 2 years ago, Urban Meyer came back not for the Jags, but because they had the number 1 overall pick. Now, it was a disaster and is over his skis. Like, if one of a quarterback over the next 2 years is like, this guy is going to be a star, that the number 1 team that's drafting number 1 overall, I would say half the time has a new coach. That would be of interest if you're Sean Payton, right?
Well, yeah, I think the 23 draft will be these guys. So the 24 draft with Caleb Williams, I think he'll be the number 1 pick in 2024. And I think it'll make whatever that job is. It's tough because like the Giants are like, you don't want to be bad again next year. You'll probably draft.
They're 2-0.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, they've got the Cowboys this week, which I feel like there'll be an overcorrection on Dallas this week. Like Dallas can't be good for a long time with Cooper Rush, but you and I both thought last week
he looks pretty good.
Okay.
I would say he's a better player than Daniel Jones.
Like who's a year away from being bad?
What's the one thing in the NFL? It's hard to tell because I would have said the Giants are going to be terrible. And what if the Titans this year compete? You would say, well, Vrabel's too good. Well, what if their team just sucks? They play the Raiders, underdog. What if all of a sudden we look up and the Titans are a 3-win team? What do they do?
Tank for Caleb.
But that's a year away. Like they won't want to be bad 2 years in a row.
But can they get out from under Tannehill's contract next year?
Yeah. So you're just saying go with Malik and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's just hard. The NFL is just hard to tell. Like in basketball, you know who's going to suck. Even in baseball, for the most part. In football, would it shock you if the Giants went 7-10 this year?
Are the Colts gonna?
What if What if Matt Ryan is just completely done and they just can't score?
But they might be bad enough to get a quarterback this year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what if they win 4 games this year?
Then they won't be waiting until 24 to get a quarterback.
No.
How many more years does Zach Wilson get out of the Jets?
Well, I mean, you just ride Flacco.